Help Save Our World, Speak, number 53. Science and Physics. The human psyche has been hijacked and infected with a thought plague. Hello and welcome to our 53rd Help Save Our World, Speak online speakers meeting, where we are changing the conversation to change our world. I am Dennis, the teacher of this quest for the truth, change and transformation. These meetings are designed to help save our world by empowering you to heal yourself so that you can empower others to heal themselves. So together we can create a happy, healthy, and sustainable future for all life on planet Earth. Let's begin with introductions. Can you start, Alex?
Sure. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm here based in South Africa, and I'm here to try and help change the minds and the things that people do on a daily basis in order to try and help save the world.
Thank you so much. It's awesome. Brendan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brendan. I have joined this group so that I can help people change their mindsets in terms of eco-villages and trying to protect nature in order to have a self-sustaining future.
Excellent. Thank you, Brendan. So I'm going to start with a presentation, and then as we go through, we'll have discussions. Our human psyche has been hijacked. Many tech companies have become predatory businesses, data mining your private information to make money at your expense. Selling your private information and selling ads to other businesses, which are directed at you to extract your wealth and energy. You are the commodity. They have taken private property ownership of your personal information. Who gave them that right to do this? Well, to be honest, you did, by subscribing to their systems like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and so on. I wish people knew that true friends spend physical time together, growing their relationships. Facebook is facing monopoly lawsuits from many different states across America. CNBC 4 days ago reported the Federal Trade Commission and a coalition of attorneys general from 48 states and territories filed 2 separate antitrust lawsuits against Facebook on Wednesday. The suits target 2 of Facebook's major acquisitions, Instagram and WhatsApp. How many people get to see your Facebook page is determined by algorithms, and how much money you can pay for the ads that you can put up on Facebook. If you play their game, you can make them rich, and you might have a chance of making some money as you do it. It is a game for the haves that excludes the have-nots. Just about every basic human right that we had has been taken from us and been monopolized with the use of technology for the benefit of the rich and powerful. Just think of water and land. All of them have been commoditized and turned into products for our consumption, but with the declared ownership of somebody with money and titles and so on. It's just a belief system. Big money and big business have become a law unto themselves. Governments have become business enterprises. The idea that governments are here for the people is to a large extent untrue. You are being lied to and indoctrinated to believe they are there for you. They are not. They are there for the rich and powerful, and you are just a source of energy, a resource, and markets to make money out of. Governments have become extensions of privately owned, money-creating corporations, banking, big business, religion, sciences, media, institutions. Governments have been bought and paid for as the enforcement warring arm of big business and bankers, and they use technology to achieve the desires of the rich and powerful. The majority of those at the top, like presidents and senators and House representatives, have the corporation's interests at heart, above the people's interests, of course, because corporations pay to put their preferred figureheads in power. So the figureheads have no choice but to go against their better judgment and put the worst people in power when it comes to fairness and care for the planet. Monsanto is an extremely destructive force against life on this planet, and yet their people getting voted into positions of power happens regularly, just because of money and power. Think about it. Almost every time you see nature being harmed to the extreme, and you feel great sadness and feel powerless to do anything about it, what is behind it? Big money and big business, which is usually exacerbated and accelerated by the use of technology, machinery, etc. Mechanized destruction and wars are taken to the extreme for the sake of owners of big businesses, corporations, CEOs, and of course, ultimately for big money. Big money and big business have become so pervasive in our everyday lives. There's a spreading of a sickness we feel for living this way of life, spreading across our planet, which is getting worse every moment of our lives. Our business world psyche is all about creating products, things to sell for money. So there's a need for resources and commodities to supply for the demand for products and services. We use our technological equipment to do damage at an accelerating rate. Money and business, religions, technology are compassionless systems. This behavior is justified as being necessary. It's only business. Money, greed, and power drive our thoughtless world, an abstract death-based economy, where we are killing living beings to create dead things for abstract money. True energy is in our living world, not in dead things. The power of life and existence is the true energy system, not abstract money. The sciences are funded by money and humans who expect returns for their money. So many sciences have followed the money to get funding, to stay in power. And that might be understandable in some cases if it was being used for the greater good and the nurturing of life on our once living planet. We in all life are fighting an unfair fight for existence. There are those who believe it is their God-given right to take whatever they want, no matter what the price to others and life itself. Then there are those who know we have to sow, grow, and create a happy, healthy, and sustainable future we want and deserve to live in. And those in power have abstracted energy into money for extraction purposes. Money is an abstract extraction tool. Then they have distracted the world's people from being a contribution to life and have taken away their basic human rights to knowledge, wisdom, land, food, and water. Corporations buy, own, and commoditize everything to sell back to us for our life's energy. Now, the majority of humanity is dependent upon owners and their corporations, unsustainable, short-lived plundering pyramid schemes. And to a large extent, only big money and big businesses' voices are heard and their power seen. How does a permaculture farmer compete with huge bank balances, mega yachts, mansions, Lamborghinis, and Bentleys. The permaculturist is the image of well thought out and planned natural living and thriving. Natural agriculture and permaculture are examples of truly successfully living in our world. The man with the things is an example of selfishness and ego for him and his own, and a failure to all life across the planet. It is difficult not to be blinded by the party lights and not to get caught up in the excitement of so much free available energy. But at what cost do we plunder our world? And what do we wake up to in the morning when the party is over? Ruin, deforestation, desertification, lost topsoil, planetary pollution, lifeless devastation, harsh conditions on a lifeless planet. In fact, we don't wake up from that. We all become extinct. It is much harder to be growers, nurturers, and creators than destroyers. It is much harder to spread and grow and nurture life than it is to chop it down and steal its value for money, wealth, power, and technology. Immediate gratification has destructive consequences. Creating a love-based, better world requires sustained caring, sharing, sowing, and nurturing. It requires positive effort and responsible behavior from everyone. We, the responsible creators, sowers, and nurturers of life, are caught up in a dilemma, caught up in this unsustainable system. How do we create if all of our energy, wealth, and power has been stolen from us? We have three options. One is to destroy the existing pyramid schemes and start again. And that doesn't seem to work out very well. It's such a waste. Number two, we wait for the system to implode upon itself, as all uncivilized pyramid schemes do when nature collapses, while preparing ourselves in whatever way we can to start again. Now, waiting that long will be too late. Or my preferred choice is we use what we have to create a better future, using all of the abstract ideas and tools for the benefit of all life and our children's futures, taking only what we need within the existing system and creating metaphorical bridging systems to a living, love, and life-based future. Destroying is a waste, but we must not lose our focus on the happy, healthy, and sustainable future we all deserve to live in. Our first step is to change the conversation to change the world. We do our best to convince enough people to change their way of life and change their world. If we choose love and life, we have no choice but to do whatever we can to create the change by being the change. Our world needs us now. We should all realize the longer we wait, the worse the destruction, and there will eventually be little to nothing left in the end of this age of ignorance. So it is time to begin to awaken, spread the truth, knowledge, and wisdom that we need to create a happy, healthy, and sustainable future for all life on Mother Earth. With this in mind, we might have to compromise our values to some small extent and play the game to have a voice and be heard, to get back to the land and plant the seeds, and have enough abstract money to nurture the plants until the plants can sustain us, supporting, donating, and funding people who are making a difference. However, we must be wary. It is in compromising ourselves that life gets muddy, and you could lose your way if you're not careful. The secret is whatever you take must create a greater benefit for life and nature into the future. Only take enough to give, grow, and create that happy, healthy, and sustainable future. Just because institutionalized plunder is so successful at destruction doesn't mean they are right. Might is not right. Killing others, plundering, raping, destroying, and winning wars doesn't make you heroes, honorable, good guys, or worthy human beings just because you brought back the plunder. We are all just one family of life on our one home planet. All life and nature needs us to wake up and be part of growing our living planet. Doing the right thing is much more heroic and honorable and responsible. Being kind, caring, sharing, giving, and receiving. We all intuitively know the wisdom of life and the universe. We just don't live by it. Those in power will do whatever they have to stay in power and control over us and our world. I see the problem with physics and science's misuse and abuse. In our misunderstanding of who and what we are and the purpose of life. That all comes down to the misunderstanding of the nature of reality, life, and the universe. This understanding has been taken away from us by biased ideas, abstract ideas, and outright lies, all driven by the interests of those in power. For example, the bias towards objective materialism as opposed to everything is composed of vibrations energy and or cycles energy has taken over our language, behavior, and psyche. The result of this disintegration is we have little to no idea of the complexities of the whole universe, our whole world, and our ecosystems, our whole internal being, and our whole connected relationships to it all. There's a very real need to reintegrate, reconstruct our perception of ourselves, our relationships with everything, and our perception of reality. It is important to see how the biased physics, money, and power reasoning has affected and infected not only our language, but all of the other ologies, sciences, biology, psychology, and so on. This is why it's so important to question everything, to gain perspective, and to understand why, to understand the way we think, behave, and live in our world. Then to understand how we have lost our relationships with one another, natural life, Mother Nature, and the universe. To understand our lack of responsibility to one another, all living systems in our world. Couldn't it be because of our disintegrated perception of our world and our universe and our place within it all? We are conditioned to believe that we are different and separate and that it is all about survival of the fittest, when connectivity and relationships are fundamental to our existence. Cooperation, moving in love, balance, and harmony is so much more the case in a healthy, connected ecosystem that survives and thrives. Thinking about everything we do in the name of science and in the context of the effects it has on our world, I believe we would do things totally differently. It is time to wake up, question everything, rethink, and become responsible adults of our time. Then simplify our lives, be kind, be caring, sharing, giving, and receiving in love, balance, and harmony, and do what we need to do to change our effects on our children and our world. What is the big picture that we should be seeing? We all should know that our world and all processes within it are complexities of the universal ecosystem. So reductionism leads to a lack of connectivity to reality and a lack of understanding of the complexities of the relationships in thriving ecosystems, and us perceiving it with a lack of love, lack of empathy and consideration. Us not seeing everything as processes and as integral processes in the greatest symphony of patterns, of flows, of electromagnetic vibrations, energy, all vibrating in balance and harmony or synchronicity with the whole. This lack of clarity, wisdom, and erroneous logic is based on a lack of understanding of the whole and an objective materialistic perspective, and more specifically, a disintegrated one. Although this materialistic science logic can be helpful in certain ways to bring some sanity, logic, and reason to a religious, crazy world, it can be harmful in many other ways. It is oversimplified and in many ways ignorant logic, meaning that it ignores what is fundamentally true about our world. I must point out there has been a movement towards systems theory by some NASA scientists who have been leading the way to create a more integrated perception. Think, if the biases of a belief system are incorrect and not founded on the truth, how will one ever be able to discern the truth? The concept is, tell a biased idea, a partial truth, an abstract idea, or a lie, and it can only become a bigger, biased, abstract idea or lie. Then no matter how much you do to try and justify and explain it, it will never become the truth. Thus, it will create bigger and bigger problems as it grows and spreads. And that's what we're experiencing right now in our world. The problems began in the origins of physics. The word physics is based on the physical. The materialistic worldview was based on ancient Greek philosophy. Democritus and Leucippus, ancient Greek philosophers of the 5th century BC, are said to be the first to record the atomic idea. The idea was that the world was composed of things like rocks, and that if broken down into smaller and smaller parts, would eventually be composed of indivisible parts, the so-called atoms, which we call atoms, which we perceive to be things. That was through time given letters, numbers, and labels on periodic tables. The objective materialistic worldview was furthered by Galileo, then Newton, and then Einstein and Max Planck, and many other particle physicists in this century. Particle physicists studying the very small subatomic realm realized that the mechanistic, materialistic objective worldview of Newtonian physics broke down in the subatomic realm. When they did that, they should have realized then that they had got it wrong and changed the fundamental premises at that moment in history, but they didn't. They also discovered that the subatomic realm is mainly occupied by space that had an immense amount of vibrations, energy, spinning at the speed of light at various energy levels, vibrating and rotating in cycles in that space, creating the effects of spinning at the speed of light. Then with Niels Bohr's Copenhagen interpretation, scientists perceived there to be a particle wave duality of light and atoms' energy at that level. which, as far as I can see, was a misunderstanding of different perspectives of light wave energy, or light waves and its energy. At that moment, they had a choice to accept the particle and waves were equally valid concepts. Choose wave or particles. Einstein, for whatever reason, chose to stick with the Newtonian light cannonballs or corpuscles idea and called the quanta of light radiation objective photons of energy. Physicists chose particles explanations over wave theory, naming electrons and protons and neutrons, neutrinos and photons and gluons and Higgs bosons and muons. This is the same naming and labeling construct that is a problem in physics. You cannot logically name a moving, changing process as a thing, but it does make it easier to calculate and use abstract mathematical symbols, units, and reasoning if you do. But it is not dealing with reality as it really is. Unique, vibrating, cycling, rotating, moving, changing, flowing, balancing, moving in relationships to the ecosystems and the whole. Photons, Einstein and Max Planck, with their black body experiments, showed what they called the photoelectric effect. They discovered that light enters and leaves the physical subatomic realm readily, as in the photoelectric effect. A quantum of energy enters and raises the atom's energy level, and then the atom collapses back down to its stable state as one quantum of energy is emitted, which he named a photon. How they chose to see a particle enters and leaves as opposed to a wave entering and leaving is where they went wrong. This fundamental error and the basic return to classical Newtonian physics, light ball cannon theory, is beyond comprehension. In the face of all of the wave characteristics of life, the only thing I can think of is they changed their perspective of light waves. Instead of seeing light on a wave-like linear Cartesian plane vibrating up and down, or three-dimensional vibrations of space, they chose to look at it from the effects of it coming directly at you, towards you, like swells in a deep ocean discharging their energy into a cliff face. If you were the cliff face, this huge wave would discharge its energy upon you in units of energy. The wave didn't change, only the perspective of it did. The subjective choice that physicists had to make when they realized the truth about the subatomic realm was to admit that they were wrong, accept that they would find mathematics hard, if not impossible to use, realizing that our physical reality is at its core vibrations of space, cycles of space, that have the effect we call energy, and change their whole institution or stick with the materialistic perception of the subatomic realm, which was easier than dealing with reality. When I was young, there were many wave theorists and many energy theorists, which have been marginalized and ignored for particle physics. It is really important to look at light now. Light travels through space as non-material electromagnetic vibrations of space, as do many other frequencies of vibration of electromagnetic space, and are calculated to travel at the speed of light, which is 299,792,000 452 meters per second, or 186.282 miles per second, or 299,792 kilometers per second in a vacuum. I just want to stop here for a second, and I want to show you some pictures. Hey, Kurt, would you like to introduce yourself? How's it going?
You know who I am. Hello, folks. Sorry, I have had something pressing this morning, as you can imagine, but I'm glad I can make some of this.
Good. Basically, what I went through, you can see on, you can actually watch the video afterwards, so you haven't lost anything. So I started with this the other day, and I said, the sun shines, the plants grow, we eat the plants, and that we grow. So really, what does that make us, you know? It makes us like the energy that's come in from the sun, the moon, the stars, and the galaxies, and we are assimilating that energy into our being, and then, well, it's being assimilated by the trees and converted into physical beings, and then we eat the fruit or the leaves or whatever it is of the plants, and we grow. So, and of course, we are using that energy to live our lives. So now we live in a connected electromagnetic giving and receiving universe. We can see the stars and the galaxies across our galaxy and the universe. And of course, we can see a lot further with telescopes on planet Earth of all different kinds, even radio telescopes, but then even we have the Hubble telescope and various other telescopes which are out in space, which are showing us images of the universe which we couldn't have dreamed of before. So light-emitting events happen on stars, causing vibrating light waves to radiate outwards into space. Light vibrations create the effect of traveling at this incredible speed, which I've spoken about already. I'm just going to move on. All right, so we live in a connected giving and receiving universe. We can see the stars and galaxies across the galaxies and across the universe. Like the first one is basically showing actual sunlight. So that's energy coming from a star, from our closest star to us, and we're seeing it. And yes, showing the radiant light going down into the depths of the ocean. And here we can see the Milky Way galaxy from planet Earth. You know, these are trees, this is water. And you can see the light that's radiating from all of those stars, and it's reflecting here off the water, and of course being absorbed by the water as well. We live in this incredible connected universe. It's actually mind-blowing what it is. Here's like the Milky Way galaxy, and these are actual galaxies out in the universe, spiraling galaxies, and this is a supernova. It's like explosion of energy and light in the universe. And here, just looking out through a telescope out into space, we can see that all of these are sources of light and energy, even if they're just red giants, or if the higher the energy, and of course the closer and everything, the brighter the stars will be, closer to white light. But a lot, like so many of these tiny little things are maybe red giants, like way, way, way out, maybe in our galaxy or maybe way beyond. So we live in this connected universe. We would not be able to see any of this stuff if there was like a gap or separation that light waves couldn't travel through this electromagnetic medium of the universe. So I showed you this last week. This is a very simple two-dimensional plane, a drawing, all right, on a flat piece of paper. And it shows that waves, all right, if we plot them the same time period across each one of these as the time period of rotation, it's a bit distorted because I had to fitting it on the slide and everything. For every 15 degrees, we can plot in a linear time scale a wave. Just bring this one across, same time period, bring it across, same time period, bring it across, and so on. And so we can see the progression or the expression of a light wave as a flat wave seen from this side. Now, of course, it's three-dimensional. It's not two-dimensional. It is this basically densification and rarefication of energy that creates these waves, all right, in a three-dimensional plane. But the effect is that the wave can be expressed as a cycle of forward motion, but it can also be expressed as a circle. But in our reality, it does not return to this position. Because our Earth is spinning, and because we're orbiting the sun in an elliptical orbit, all right, it is literally spiraling forward, but I'll show you that in the next picture. Now, this is a diagram of electromagnetic waves of different frequencies, meaning that they happen more frequently, less frequently, and so on, and are more spread out over time. So these waves on the electromagnetic spectrum, they increase in energy. Now, this is very important. They require a lot more energy to have a very high frequency wave than it does for a low frequency wave. So this says increasing wavelength, and that would be increasing frequency. Now, we have the different wavelengths, and of course, low down, you have AM and FM, and then TV and radar. These are called radio waves. And then we have infrared, which is heat waves, which is this whole spectrum below red light. Then we have the visible light spectrum, and that is like all of these colors which together actually make up white light. So you have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And those are the main that's our visible spectrum, our visible light. Those are the frequencies of light that we can see with our eyes. Beyond that, all right, we know that sunlight burns our skin, but we cannot see it. And so those are ultraviolet A and ultraviolet B radiation and so on. And then we have X-rays. We know they are very powerful high frequency waves, and we know how dangerous they are. And then gamma rays or cosmic rays, which are much higher and much more powerful. So in this progression, in this direction, as the frequency gets higher, it requires more energy. And this guy has an example. He's got a bicycle and he's riding along with a dynamo on the wheel, and he goes quite fast, but he can't really get to a point where he gets beyond sort of like a yellowy orange light. And he realizes that to get to the point of white light requires, combination of all these frequencies. He has to pedal really, really, really fast to get enough energy to make that happen. But of course, he can't do that on the bicycle. And we know that we achieve that in electric light bulbs. The greater the frequency, the more the energy required to create the electromagnetic waves in the medium of space. The more energy it carries through space, the greater the impact of the radiant wave. Now, this is just showing you the higher the frequencies require more energy, and it's just a list of all of the different colors, and it's just saying the same thing I've just said. And then I go on to what have we discovered so far. We live in a connected electromagnetic medium of the universe, which has vibrating energies, waves and cycles of energy, or venergy, vibrating energy. We live in a giving and receiving universe, because what we receive, we radiate outwards. It's like this constant flow of giving and receiving that's happening between us and the stars and the universe. Now, proximity, the closer we are to a star, makes a huge difference to the amount of energy we will experience. And of course, that is very important in our relationships. The closer we are together, the more energy we receive. Everything is a result of what came before, cause and effect. What you sow, you shall reap. There are many sources that create events that release or propagate vibrations, energy, or energy waves. There are no absolute beginnings and ends. Creation is happening. So energy is constantly in this process of spinning and vibrating and flowing. It's like, where would you choose a beginning to be? Like up there in space, or over there, or me, or it's good if it's like an egocentric me thing, but that hasn't worked for us for a long time throughout history. So even when we considered the Earth to be the center of the universe at some stage, and we believed we were on a flat Earth, and then we believed that everything circled around us in perfect circles. So there are many sources. There are no absolute beginnings and ends. Creation is happening. Change is fundamental to the nature of life, our world, and the universe. Everything is being composed of patterns, of symphonies, of cycles, of vibrations, and moving forward through space, which have energy waves or cycles, or vibrations of space. The properties of human love are similar, if not the same, as the properties of space and life in nature. Love is the creative force of the universe and everything in it. Connectivity, giving and receiving of energy, proximity, transference of energy in relationship with nurturing, caring, protecting, and feeding and growing new life. It's like everything in the universe works with the same principles and same wisdom as a creative force, as is love. So here we have that figure 2 again, and then figure 3, we have energy coming in a different direction. And here, the concept of energy coming, light waves coming from space and spinning around, but not spinning around in exactly the same place, actually creating these helical coils. Really, look, this is 2-dimensional. So in reality, it's 3-dimensional. But the concept of this movement forward through space as a planet spins is how all of this energy is wound up in atoms. E equals mc squared. Einstein is basically saying that this energy coming in at the speed of light is combining to form atoms. And then, of course, so we are spinning as we orbit the sun. And this is just showing you one complete wave and one complete cycle. So A, B, and then C. And this is showing you, I couldn't draw the spirals in a hurry, so, but the movement is forward. So can you see, this is a really interesting concept. Time, in this sense, is spread out. But can you see, once you start spiraling together, like in very close proximity and relatively slowly moving forward, you change the time base of your reality, right? So that's it for those slides. I just wanted to show you this image. We have objectified all of the atoms in the subatomic realm, turning them into letters and names and atomic weights and numbers and so on. And how does that naming or classifying actually detract from what they are? And then the next slide. Here's the model of the elementary particles in the subatomic realm, like quarks and leptons and Higgs bosons and all of these electrons and neutrons and so on, and neutrinos and muons and whatever. It's like we've named them, we've classified them, and now they're objects. They're things. They're not the energy that's flying through space and vibrating and so on. Anybody interested? Kurt, Alex, you find that interesting? Kurt?
Yeah, actually, I think the whole piece on the physical universe and what is reality. Things are in motion versus being static, like we make them out to be when we label them. I think that all ties in pretty well. I had studied some Heidegger back 20 some odd years ago and more, and one of the things that Heidegger had proposed was that we as human beings are just programmed to label and sort and categorize things. And that's just kind of our nature in order to understand and to put things in whatever kind of logic we can. And Heidegger proposed that when we do that, we take the life or the possibility of life or progress out of that thing. Even calling it a thing does that. So, once and it becomes like we know it then, and once we know something, then it's fixed, right? We just hold it there and there's no other possibility. So the little story about the physicists having to change their universal view because, oops, things just don't fit into that one. So it just reminds me how, we hold the universe as the ultimate reality. And I think most of us have been learning recently in the past decades that it's not that. And it's a projection of what we think is reality, and it's filtered through our senses and the way we process, so that we allow things to have a life without having to name them, label them, categorize them, and then nail them to the ground of knowledge that this is. I think it's a wise perspective that we, as we're moving forward in the universe, get to play with. We know what we know, and knowing isn't necessarily truth, and it's not necessarily reality. It's what we know, and if we hold it at that, then are willing to be adaptable, then we have the possibility of change and transformation. If we hold that what we know is it, then we're stuck. So yeah. I like this piece that you did here.
Yeah, I think it's so important to bring it back to reality, and it's like seeing the photos from Earth, seeing the light. It's like, oh my gosh, what we're saying is true, and it's just I think we are so caught up in our minds, like you say, as physicists or whatever, looking at the physical, that it's like they don't step outside and go and play in the mud or go and see reality. We got too lost in our languages and names, and it's just yeah.
I think how we do it, how we study it, and how we look at it, and how we perceive it in our everyday universal world, or what we perceive to be our universal world, is very two-dimensional. It's like I think of it as, the piece of paper going through the machine, measuring the tremor, and it's doing this little zigzaggy thing on a piece of paper on a graph. It's so two-dimensional. It's based on their version of their zero, and going from there, this is how we're perceiving our world in this two-dimension little zigzag on a piece of paper, as opposed to what it actually is, and what it and all the more dimensions we see beyond that, or could measure or perceive or understand beyond that.
Kurt, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm aligned with that. Again, we hold so much as truth from our minute perspective in the scheme of everything, that even though we have what we think is a strong ego to keep us as human beings at the top of the chain here on Earth, really our knowledge is minuscule, and what we know is not actual. I used to think that the sun was always 93 million miles away from Earth until I started to see solar distances on one of my time and date programs. And it said, well, today it's 91.7 million miles away from Earth. I thought, wait a minute, a million-mile change? That's quite a bit. That's not the exact figure I thought, but it's just one of those things where we're questioning everything that we hold as truth. And my mention of Heidegger, for those of you that don't know the philosopher, he was contemporaneous with a lot of the physicists that you were talking about, and certainly into the 30s and 40s and 50s he was writing. And so as the physicists were saying, this is, and this is, and this is, he was saying, this isn't, this isn't, this isn't. Stop saying absolutes as if. If you are going to do that, then just say, as far as we know now, this is. So I like that this conversation and physics and everything is continuing to evolve. In this, I'm going to say in this century, I don't know when Kurzweil stated it, but as we're moving towards the singularity, which is the single point. By the way, we have a couple of planets going to be creating singularity in a couple of weeks, I think on the 21st. They'll be, to our naked eye, looking at the same point of light up in the sky. But as we move towards that singularity, this is a theory, this is a concept, and it's made by human beings that are saying, this is what, this is what. And it's a projection, it's a theory, and there may be some evidence towards it, but cosmologically, we really don't know. So I continue to want to reinforce the point that, let's be human becomings, let's be world evolvings. And as we see a direction that's not functional and effective and sustainable, then we get to shift it a little bit. But understand, everything is in motion, everything is dynamic. And I say that as truth. We also know that there's entropy and stasis as well in the universe, from what we're able to imagine, and even that can be debunked. So I'm just saying, as you probably have guessed, just hold on tightly, but not so tight that you choke the life out of things, including your thoughts.
I love that idea with Alex's, like we've like developed these tools and graphs and paper with bar graphs and whatever, all sorts of wave patterns and so on. And all of these techniques are really, really helpful. I mean, knowing that whether the guy's heart rate is looking sort of stable or whether he's going to die on a graph is like, I think, helpful information. But when you can't, like, you've lost the feel of the flow of blood, and the blood has stopped flowing, or it's flowing irregularly, it's like you've lost your humanity. You have been separated from life to this abstract perception of reality. And it's also very important, and I find myself doing it, and it's a big mistake, is using superlatives like it's always and everything, and you can't use those words, and you've got to be very, very careful with your language. And I make the mistakes, but when I see them, I'm like, no, I didn't do that. It's like, in most cases, or in some cases, or or more often than not, or less often than not. There has to be like shades of gray in our language to cover the possibilities. But then, of course, you can become so careful of covering possibilities that you can't communicate at all. So it's a game of trying to communicate as clearly as possible without becoming, it's a fact, Newton said, it's a law, it's the law of nature. That used to drive me crazy when I was doing marine engineering. I would have these extreme Newtonian physics guys and religious nuts, and that's the way they spoke. It's absolute fact. This is the way it is. And it's like, it used to make me crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. A good friend of mine, he's going about 25 years ago, when we talked mostly about psychological things and theories and philosophy, but his statement was, and that's the way it is, unless it's not. And so whenever he would make a declarative statement, he would say, yeah, and that's it, unless it's not. So always keep that in mind.
Yeah. Anyway, so that we don't sort of over push it, we can carry on talking, Kurt. But Alex and Brendan, we've covered basically as much information as we can on that section, and we'll move on to the next one next week.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
All right, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great evening, guys. Or afternoon for you, Kurt.
Thanks much.